Ukraine used one drone to locate 7 Russian vehicles, and the strike was devastating.
June 29, 2025, early morning, somewhere near Lysychansk in the Luhansk region. A small reconnaissance drone quietly hovers above the forest. Its camera lens zooms in on a road below, and then the operator sees it, a long column of Russian military vehicles, trucks, infantry carriers, artillery systems, all moving together in one tight formation. The drone operator counts quickly. 1 vehicle, 5 vehicles, 10, 20. The column keeps going, 30, 40, more than 70 vehicles in total packed with soldiers and equipment, all heading toward Ukrainian positions. One wrong move and they'll disappear into the forest. One delay and the chance is gone. The operator knows what this means. This isn't just a convoy. This is a target of a lifetime. The question is simple. Can one drone change the course of a battle? Let me take you back to understand why this moment mattered so much. By mid-2025, the war in Ukraine had entered a brutal phase. Russia was pushing hard in the eastern regions, trying to break through Ukrainian defenses. Every day, convoys like this one carried fresh troops, ammunition, and heavy weapons to the front lines. For Ukraine, stopping these convoys wasn't just tactical, it was survival. Each truck that reached its destination meant more firepower aimed at Ukrainian soldiers. Each artillery piece meant more shelling of Ukrainian cities. Each group of infantry meant harder fights ahead. But Ukraine had a problem. They were outnumbered. They had less artillery, less ammunition, less of everything really. So they adapted, they became smarter. They started using what they had in creative ways. And what they had were drones, thousands of them. Small, cheap, effective drones that could see what human eyes couldn't. The TIVAZ division had become experts at this. They'd combine drone reconnaissance with artillery strikes. The drones would find targets, the artillery would destroy them. Simple, deadly, effective. But finding a convoy this large was rare. Most Russian forces had learned to move in smaller groups. They'd spread out. They'd use tree cover, they'd move at night. This convoy, for some reason, hadn't done any of that. Maybe they thought they were far enough from Ukrainian positions. Maybe they underestimated Ukrainian drone range. Maybe they were just careless. Whatever the reason, they made a mistake. And in war, mistakes cost lives. The TIVAZ drone operator immediately radioed the coordinates. Artillery crews scrambled to their positions. HIMARS rocket systems turned toward the target area. Gunners loaded special ammunition, not regular shells, cluster munitions. Now cluster munitions are controversial. Many countries have banned them because of the danger to civilians. But on a military convoy in an active war zone, they're devastatingly effective. Here's why. A cluster munition shell opens in midair and releases dozens of smaller bomblets over a wide area. It's like turning one artillery shell into 50 bombs at once. Perfect for hitting a spread-out target. Perfect for a convoy. The artillery commander did the math. A convoy this size, moving on a road bunched together, it would take maybe 3 or 4 cluster rounds to saturate the entire area, but they had to time it perfectly. Hit too early and the front vehicles might escape. Too late and the rear ones would scatter. The drone kept watching, feeding live video, updating positions. The convoy was moving at about 30 kilometers per hour, standard military speed on a decent road. They weren't in a hurry, they felt safe. That was about to change. Fires came the orders. The first salvo of cluster munitions arced through the morning sky. The drone operator watched his screen. The convoy kept moving unaware, and then the shells opened. Dozens of submunitions scattered across the road. The explosions were nearly simultaneous. A wave of fire and shrapnel swept through the column. Trucks exploded, fuel tanks ignited. Ammunition cooked off in secondary explosions. The entire front section of the convoy disappeared in smoke and flames. Russian soldiers jumped from vehicles and ran for the trees. They scattered in all directions looking for any cover. Some made it to a nearby forest belt. They thought they were safe there, they thought wrong. The Ukrainian artillery crews were already adjusting. The drone showed them exactly where the soldiers had gone. The second wave of cluster munitions was already loaded. Adjust fire, forest line, 200 meters east, the drone operator called out. More shells, more explosions. This time in the tree line where the Russian soldiers had taken cover. There was nowhere to run now. The cluster bomblets tore through the forest, finding targets that artillery shells alone might have missed. The drone footage was brutal. Vehicle after vehicle destroyed. Soldiers caught in the open. The convoy that moments ago had been confidently rolling toward the front line was now a scene of chaos and destruction. Ukrainian forces estimated over a dozen enemy soldiers were killed in the forest alone. The total number of vehicles destroyed reached into the dozens. Trucks, infantry carriers, even a valuable S-4 Tulpan self-propelled mortar, one of Russia's most powerful artillery systems. The Tulpan was especially significant. When it was hit, its ammunition exploded. The blast was so powerful it completely destroyed the vehicle. No crew could have survived. And Russia just lost a weapon system that cost millions and took years to build. The entire strike, from first detection to final explosion, took less than 15 minutes. One drone, a handful of artillery shells, and a Russian convoy was wiped off the battlefield. The aftermath told the story. Burned-out vehicles lined both sides of the road. Smoke rose from dozens of impact points. Supply trucks that would have sustained Russian forces for days were now scrap metal. The soldiers who would have reinforced enemy positions were casualties instead. But here's what made this strike truly devastating. It wasn't just about the destroyed equipment. It was about what it prevented. Every truck in that convoy carried something. Ammunition, food, medical supplies, fuel, all things an army needs to keep fighting. Without those supplies, Russian units at the front would have to ration. Without those reinforcements, they'd be understaffed. Without that artillery, they'd have less firepower. One successful drone-guided strike had just made the next few weeks significantly harder for Russian forces in that sector. And the psychological impact? Imagine you're a Russian soldier, you're told your convoy is safe, you're far from enemy positions, you're moving fast. And then, out of nowhere, artillery rains down with pinpoint accuracy. You never saw it coming, you never had a chance. Now every convoy movement becomes terrifying, every road becomes a potential kill zone, every open space becomes a threat. Because you know Ukrainian drones are watching, and you know Ukrainian artillery is ready. This is the new reality of modern warfare. In World War II, you needed aircraft to spot for artillery, expensive aircraft, trained pilots, complex coordination. Now, a single operator with a cheap commercial drone can do the same job. Better even because the drone can stay overhead longer, fly lower, see more clearly. Ukraine has leaned into this hard. By 2025, they were producing over 50,000 drones per month. Small workshops across the country churning out FPV drones, reconnaissance drones, kamikaze drones. Different drones for different missions, but all serving the same goal: level the playing field against a larger enemy. The TIVAZ division incident wasn't unique. It was one of many. Almost daily, similar strikes were happening across the front line, Ukrainian drones finding targets, Ukrainian artillery destroying them. Sometimes it was convoys, sometimes command posts, sometimes ammunition depots. Russia tried to adapt. They moved more carefully. They used electronic warfare to jam drone signals. They positioned air defense systems, but drones are cheap. If one gets jammed or shot down, you send another, and another. Eventually one gets through, and one is all you need. There's a broader lesson here about technology and warfare. Expensive doesn't always mean better. Russia has advanced fighter jets, sophisticated radar systems, heavy tanks, all very costly. Ukraine has commercial drones modified with cameras and explosives, fraction of the price. But in certain situations, those cheap drones are more effective than any jet. It's asymmetric warfare at its finest. When you can't match your enemy's strength, you find their weakness. Russian convoys needed to move on roads. Roads are predictable. Predictable means targetable, and targetable means vulnerable. So what happened after this strike? The TIVAZ division uploaded their drone footage to Telegram. Military analysts around the world watched it. Defense officials took notes. Other Ukrainian units studied the tactics. And Russian commanders held very uncomfortable meetings about why their convoy got annihilated. For the soldiers in that convoy, the war ended that morning. For the Ukrainian forces who executed the strike, it was another successful operation. For military strategists globally, it was further proof that drone warfare has fundamentally changed combat. We're watching warfare evolve in real time. The lessons learned in Ukraine will shape how militaries fight for decades. Small drones, precise strikes, real-time coordination. It's all possible now with technology that costs a few $1,000s instead of millions. Think about it, one Ukrainian soldier sitting safely kilometers away, operating a drone with a controller, feeding information to artillery crews who fire shells and then pack up and move before counter-battery fire arrives. No one in direct danger, maximum effect, minimum risk. Compare that to traditional warfare where you'd need forward observers creeping close to enemy positions, risking their lives for every targeting update. Or aircraft flying over hostile territory, vulnerable to air defense. Drones changed all that. The convoy destruction near Lysychansk was devastating, yes, but it was also a sign of things to come. As drone technology gets better and cheaper, these kinds of strikes will become even more common, not just in Ukraine, anywhere there's conflict. Some military experts believe we're witnessing the end of traditional convoy operations. Others think armies will adapt with better electronic warfare and dispersed movements. But one thing's certain, the era of moving large military formations openly is over. The drones are watching, and the artillery is ready. So here's the question for you. Imagine you're a military commander. How would you move supplies and troops when enemy drones could be anywhere? Would you risk large convoys for efficiency, or small groups for safety? How would you protect your forces from an enemy that can see everything? It's not an easy problem, and that's exactly why this strike mattered. It showed that even with all of Russia's military might, a single Ukrainian drone operator could stop an entire convoy. Technology, tactics, and timing, that's the new formula for success. If you found this story fascinating, hit that like button. Subscribe for more deep dives into modern military operations and the technology-changing warfare. And turn on notifications because you won't want to miss what's coming next. The war in Ukraine is writing the textbook on 21st century combat. And we're here to break it down for you, one strike at a time.